number of years, China has been known as a major English learning society, where the number of those learning English has been estimated at over 400 million at the start of the century. The importance of English in China's education system has been typified by the rapid growth of privately run language schools and training institutes across the country in recent years. Chinese people now spend more time and energy learning English than any other country in the world. But for all this effort, many still fail to achieve real proficiency, and the numbers of people who actually find a significant use for English in their daily lives is still a small fraction of the total that has studied the language. Why is that? Is the English fever actually detrimental to English learners in China? How do we learn a new language, and what is the way to understand the culture behind the language? Welcome to The Point. I'm Lu Xin, and I'm pleased to be joined in our studio by Gu Dabaihua, who is a popular talk show translator in China, and Angela Xu, Chief Culture Officer of Education First China. To both of you, welcome. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. And first of all, Gu Dabaihua, it's a great pleasure to have you on our show because you have over 8 million followers. 8 million. That's more than the population of Switzerland.
Yeah,
8 million followers on the Chinese social media account Weibo, which is the Chinese, let's say, equivalent to Twitter.
Yeah.
And you do that by putting Chinese subtitles to American talk shows and
TV
shows, all of that. How did you manage?
Talking about Weibo account, first I'd like to clear up some misunderstandings and rumors. You know, social media account is not really the person, the real person. It's like an online identity. So there's a difference between the two, and there's a gap between the two. And this gap creates or leaves a room for imagination and illusion. So people, they don't know the whole picture. They just know pieces of it. So they like to use their imagination, sometimes unrealistic ideas, to fill in the blanks and fill in the gaps. So it's a very good example of expectation versus reality. They say, they believe that I am an English major, but the truth is I majored in traditional Chinese medicine.
Traditional Chinese medicine.
Yeah, traditional Chinese medicine.
Yeah, how come you have come to grasp the language of English so well by yourselves? Have you studied abroad? Have you lived abroad?
No, there's the second assumption they make, that they think that I have been living or studying in the United States or abroad for several years, but the truth is I've never been abroad until the year 2015. And most interestingly, some people believe that I am a girl. Sorry to let everybody down.
Well, on the internet, yeah, you can be a dog and nobody would know
that's true.
that. But tell us, so when did you start doing what you're doing now, translating these talk shows and TV shows, and how many have you done so far?
It was like 15 years ago, I began to watch American late night talk shows. And roughly 7 years ago, I started to post all this translated version of American TV shows on Weibo, and I've done like thousands of them.
Wow.
I lost count. Usually the frequency is I will make like 1 or 2 clips every day if I have time, so must be thousands of them.
That's your full-time job?
It's not my full-time job.
It's
like a
hobby.
hobby. Also, like English learning is like a hobby to me. It's like my passion.
And you learned it by yourself?
Yeah, mostly by myself.
Yeah, because I understand what you do is you have to listen to every single word, basically, of a clip.
True.
And then translate that into Chinese, in a language that the Chinese people can understand and still retain the original flavor, right? The humor, the style. Yeah. What is the most difficult for you? That's
the most difficult part for me, because it's very difficult to get across this language barrier, to convey the authentic humor, the authentic meaning of some puns, some double entendre, some of the funny jokes, into a whole different, very, very different language, our language.
Can you give an example?
For example, we talked about this before in Britain. They had this very old saying. It has been there for several decades. It's called "to spend a penny." to spend a penny.
To spend a penny.
Yeah, that's an euphemism for going to the bathroom.
Uh-oh.
Because,
I wouldn't understand that.
yeah, several decades ago, there was a World Expo taking place in London. They have this new invention, very exciting invention of what we called porta potty. It's a portable toilet,
yeah.
and you have to use 1 penny to open the door to use that.
How do you translate that into Chinese?
So you have to keep this the authentic meaning and the actual layer of meaning of the original phrase. So what I do is I translate it into Chinese as 去方一遍.
Okay.
So get the meaning of going to the toilet and also penny.
Because in Chinese, 去方便, to 方便 means to go to the loo, to go to the
yeah,
toilet.
to take
but,
a leak.
The word penny in Chinese is 便士. So by saying 去方一遍, you combine these two meanings into the same. That takes a lot of originality, Angela.
Very clever.
Yeah.
Thank you, thank you.
Probably not everyone can learn English in the 古代白话 way. I think I'm also English learner myself. My major was English, and I believe that watching original movies and TV shows is a very good supplementary way of learning English because you can adopt the accent and learn the puns and the idioms and also the body language by observing, which is often ignored, not taught in a traditional school environment, right? However, not everyone has the self-discipline and the hard work as you do, because I know that you've done a lot of digging into the dictionary to try to explain the puns. I believe that most people probably would benefit from a more systematic way of learning, because you do have to have the structure of a grammar and a vocabulary to build the foundation, and also we call it more scientific way of learn and try and apply. So learn is you learn the basics and try the language and apply the language in an immersive environment.
Still, how do you look at the phenomenon that there are just so many people, especially young people, following all of these talk shows, following the American soap operas, TV shows? You know, there's such a huge appetite for it. That is why maybe Guda has 8 million followers. How do you look at that, Angela, from a cultural perspective?
Yeah, that's an interesting phenomenon. I would say, first of all, it is the phenomenon, a result of Chinese open to the outside world. Chinese people have chance and interest of understanding the world. And as well as more foreign company and the international friends want to learn about China. So I think that reflects the interest of Chinese people understanding and the Western culture. The second thing is learning English takes efforts, and it's not just a hobby. It takes interest, takes passion, takes perseverance, and also it requires practice to make perfect. So not everyone probably want to invest in that. And into this world where you have this internet really provides you piecemeal information and a fast food consumption method and the mentality, it is probably people think it's easy a little bit to adopt, to get the,
but it's also the other method, which is free, which is fun for everybody. You don't have to go to school. I think the fact that both of you are sitting here is an interesting comparison, because you represent the more traditional, orthodox way of learning English, where you go to school, follow a textbook, where the teacher teaches you this and that. And 古代白话 is probably the self-learning new culture on the internet, where rules don't really count. You do it your way.
Actually, can I disagree with that?
Please.
When I say that we don't just teach English using watching the video way, we actually have tons of material that we photo shoot, we videotape about real life scenarios, and which is in our online learning platform called English. We have an online learning platform called English Live, and we actually do not teach in a traditional way. We also don't teach English for test preparation. We teach English in an immersive environment where, whether you are online, at home, or abroad. You learn in a real environment.
I understand. You really also have to change with the time because people want to have English that they can use instead of just for the textbook. However, I also wanted to, I also felt the difference is also the kind of different mentality of the netizens, right? Especially the younger generation. I don't know, how do you identify yourself so that people, the young people who have a lot of free spirit, how they can relate to you? We know there's popularity of the so-called loser culture, the 屌丝文化. Are you catering, do you think you're catering to that, or because of that you have such a popularity?
I think I'm not specifically catering that kind of new words or new trends. I'm growing up with them, with all the followers, with the young people. People like to categorize them as like the 80s, the 90s people, the millennials. I think they are just young people. We have a new generation of people. We will always have new generation of people who think differently, who act differently, who consume the information differently and than the previous generations. So what I think is, we just mentioned one thing very important, is interest, is fun, is humor. We like to do things in a more like interesting way. That's why they are following American TV shows and movies and talk shows, because they are funny. But there's a misconception, which I totally agree with Angela, that you can learn something. You can really learn something like the spoken English, the listening abilities from TV shows and movies, but you have to learn it, not just watch it. Simply watching it is not good enough. It's not as good as a material of learning English as the traditional textbook. You have to really study, like back in the days when we have very few choices, it's easier to make the decision which TV show we like to follow. But right now they have thousands of choices, so they don't have the time to really dig in to study it.
But what is the point you want to make when you are doing all of these translations? What do you want to do for them? What do you want to give to these friends who are following you?
I really want to open up a little bit of a window, or give them a little bit of a taste of the culture. Because I believe that listening, reading, writing, speaking disabilities are just utensils, and the tools are very important to use for a very big and luxurious meal, a big fat meal. The meal is more important than the tools. And we need to learn this, how to use this too. But the ultimate goal is the meal, the culture.
The culture. On the other hand, while people are watching all of this, I can't help but noticing a lot of content which are in conflict, let's say, with the traditional values, with the traditional moral teachings. And I understand this word 节操碎了一地. I don't know how to translate that. I don't know how to translate that into English. If you would help me, that would be great. Because that seems to be what people are looking for, to shatter the traditional values, the traditional, rigid, I don't know, again, elegance and, all of that. And they want to have it in a non-traditional way, in a rebellious way. But is that the right way forward? I'm sorry to ask this question about right and wrong, but we just can't help it.
I think that's not only about right or wrong. It's about choices. They have more choices, and I believe one thing, that why they are following these new things and very fresh things. Like 12 years ago, I can count the number of people who are following these kind of late night talk shows in China on my two hands. Less than 10 people. And 7 years ago, there are only maybe hundreds of people watching this. It's the demographics are very small. So it's new, it's strange, it's unfamiliar. I think it's a human nature that we like to explore the new things. For example, I have a boy who's 17 months old. I like to buy things and toys and books for him. But ultimately, the things he likes the most is the newest toy. So I think that's one part of the reason why people are following this. And another thing is, they think this is a very different kind of way of entertainment.
Okay, we're going to take a very short break, and when we come back, please explain that. And you have been watching The Point with me, Liu Xin, on CGTN. We'll be back right after this. Welcome back again. So, Gu Dabaihua, you were explaining to us some of the driving forces of what you are doing here. You mentioned also a very interesting phenomenon. Could you please pick up on that?
Yeah, I think it's a new choice for them. They can enjoy this kind of information providing program, because I want to mention a very interesting example. One of my favorite talk show hosts is Jon Stewart. He did a lot of like ridiculing and mocking of the politicians and media like CNN, Fox News, and MSNBC. But like 10 years ago, there was a poll. The question is, who is the most trusted news person after Walter Cronkite? Usually we would think that Brian Williams, Diane Sawyer, or Katie Couric, who were the biggest shot during that time, a period of time. But the result is really shocking. Jon Stewart. He's a comedian. He's a clown. He's a fake
What does that
anchor.
say about this kind of
It's a
infotainment?
distrust of
Yeah, I
Is
think
that
that's,
cynicism?
from the audience.
Yeah.
Cynicism.
I think part
Because
of
he
the
can't
reason is
really,
cynicism.
yeah?
But he's really exposing the hypocrisy in the media. So he's really talking to the people in a way they can understand, in a really honest way. So I don't think that means we should just find or get information about current affairs from late night talk shows. But they provide a new kind of way, maybe vulgar to some extent, way to provide information for young people.
So you want to translate those shows and to the fullest possible extent and present it to the Chinese audience so that they can understand exactly what people are talking about. And but on the other hand, maybe don't you, as we are in this cultural, let's say, conflict between the West and the East. Also, media is very much part of this cultural war, I would say, competition for market and for more followers. Don't you also think your translation also kind of feed the Western values into the Chinese populace, into the young Chinese brains? Do you think you're doing that, or is there some other consideration?
I think that's kind of what I believe is people, right now, people know more information because we are living in an era of information explosion. So when you know more, you want to know more and more. So there is, the more you know, the more you want to know. So there is only,
So they
I think
become
it's
more attached, maybe they identify more with the Western value, with the Western ideology.
Yeah, I think it's inevitable because we are watching American TV shows, we're watching American blockbusters in the cinemas, and we're using a lot of American-made products. So it's something inevitable. But what I'm trying to do is open up a window to see the real Western world is not as good as you thought, and also it's not as bad as you thought. You can get access to a real Western world. You can learn from them. I think we have differences. We have advantages. For example, Chinese culture, we have our wisdoms. Western culture, they have their spirit, like adventurous spirit. We can learn from each other.
Well, I actually don't think that the TV shows or the talk shows are real life. They are the dramatized life.
Yeah.
So a better way for you to truly understand the culture and the people there is probably to actually you live there, you experience there. And also there are so great Chinese culture that I feel we Chinese, if we master the level of English and truly understand both cultures, can help the world understand us better.
Yeah.
And another thing that after living in USA for about 8 years, I noticed how important culture is beyond just language, and how do you behave appropriately in the cultural context. So one example, so I mentored a Chinese MBA student living in Boston, and one day he came to me saying, I feel so hurt. He actually used the word discriminate. I said, stop, please don't use this is a very strong word. And that's what happened. And he said, well, I went to this networking event, and then I didn't feel the people talk to me with enthusiasm. I said, what happened? I said, did you actually ask if they have a job for you? So that was exactly what happened.
Okay.
And I said, this occasion is for small talk. You hold a glass of wine, you walk around and have a small, high-frequency conversation.
Yeah.
It's not something that is where you ask for a job. Yeah.
So
So
that
really is the cultural
It's a culture shock.
understanding. Yeah.
It shows the importance of understanding the culture behind the language
Yes.
instead of just the ABC
Yeah.
itself.
Exactly.
However, on the other hand, there's really this discussion, let's say, within the Chinese society, how much importance we can give to learning English vis-a-vis learning Chinese.
Right.
I think that the discussion is even becoming more heated. For instance, why do the Chinese people are obliged to sit in a text of English language if they want to go to a good university? I don't think in the United States you would have to go through, you know, a test of a foreign language, these Chinese, to go to a good university. Angela, how do you look at this kind of discussion? And you have been following the English teaching industry for the past 18 years. How has the trend been changing?
Has been changing, absolutely, yeah. In the past 25 years, EF has been in China. We witnessed a huge increase of demand. And from the geographic spread, from first-tier cities to now second-tier cities to all over China. And from young kids, 3 years old, to elder people, the silver-haired people who want to learn English. And the people also have different motivations for learning English, whether it's studying abroad or travel, because we have more dispensable income, or we call it career crunchers, want to advance their career. Because our research shows that if you have a better English, you do have a better opportunity to have a higher income, personal income. So we do see a huge trend of learning English. And I personally think, because English is the most spoken language, foreign language, in the world, it is just impossible for us to refuse learning the language. Yeah. We should definitely master Chinese language as a Chinese, because you have to be able to recite the poems, the 古文, right, the poems, to truly understand the essence of Chinese culture. And but then at the same time, we cannot refuse the opening up, which is China today. We are becoming increasingly international.
I think a big factor of China's fast growth has also been the fact that so many Chinese have learned English, right?
Yes.
We're able to learn the new things, to communicate with people from abroad. I think that's a good factor, but really where to put that into perspective, I think is a great question to think about. However, we do have people like you, Gu Dabaihua, who translates Western talk shows into Chinese. Is there such an effort going on the other way around?
Yeah.
Actually, and I've been trying to do the same thing the other way, trying to explain things and trying to translate Chinese things to the American or Western markets or countries for several years. And we have been doing something. And every time I'm visiting the United States or other countries, foreign countries, I'll talk with the local people. We'll explain. For example, we just mentioned that in the United States we talk about fortune cookies.
Yeah.
They all think it's a Chinese thing, but actually it's not a Chinese thing, because
It's
we
an
don't have
American
this kind.
thing.
It's an American
It's
thing.
from Korean,
And-
actually,
From
living in
Korean.
America, yeah.
And there's a fun fact that in the 80s or 90s, it got branded as Californian cookies and got introduced into China. So I try to do the same thing, but it's a little bit difficult because
Why?
Because the market is very competitive. In the United States, we and some friend of mine have been trying to translate Chinese TV shows and Chinese movies and try to get into the market of the United States. And because they have so many things to watch and so many movies, so it's difficult. But we're trying.
Yeah, I guess also there needs to be this huge appetite, right, for Chinese culture and Chinese style entertainment, and also there also be maybe talented people like you in the United States who are interested in Chinese culture and who understand the English language very well to do exactly what you're doing.
But I heard we have an increasing number of followers on the Point program overseas.
We are doing our best to do exactly what we were trying to do.
And
By the
good
way,
thing is-
sorry?
And the good thing is, I think the curiosity towards Chinese language and Chinese culture is increasing in the United States and other Western countries.
Yeah, that is demonstrated by more and more foreign people. They come to China to work.
Yeah.
Yes, if you look at the number of people working in China and their interest in Chinese language, that is increasing.
Yeah.
And the other thing I do think, as a Chinese, I believe that once you master a level of English and then you are also proud of you as a Chinese identity, then you have a culture identity.
Yeah.
So you are both Chinese, at the same time you are probably, let's say, American or British, and then you are fluid in bridging the culture barriers. And then I often find that in my company, when I introduce my Chinese culture to my colleagues and friends, they show more respect to you.
And I think it's the world is much more interesting when your horizon is bright, is more open.
Can I add to that?
Yeah, please,
I have
very
some,
quickly. 10 seconds, please.
Okay, I think it's very good to prepare all the students who are going to study abroad how to maintain their identity, cultural identity. Don't lose that.
Yes.
Don't downplay that
Yes.
to fit in.
Yes.
You should be proud to be a Chinese.
Exactly.
Even if you can watch a lot of Western TV shows.
Yeah.
Maintain your Chinese heart.
Yeah.
I think actually the more you know, the more you understand yourself better,
Yes.
the more you understand the other side better.
Yes.
Many thanks to both of you for coming to our show. Gu Dabaihua, who's a popular talk show translator in China with 8.6 million followers, and Angela Xu, Chief Culture Officer of Education First China. And Mala's point, very briefly, translating a TV show is really harder than it looks. The challenge is making that happen across different languages and cultures. TV show titles, for example, are generally short and surprisingly hard to translate. Some of the translation of show titles into other languages illustrate this well. For example, The Big Bang Theory, which is one of my favorite shows, is called Spectacles Forked Up in Finnish. Mad Men is The Crazies in Russian. So localization is sometimes done even when the target market speaks the same language as the original show. For example, the UK versions of Law and Order or Coupling or The Office all differ remarkably from the American versions of the same shows. Humor, another thing that is very difficult to translate. Jokes often hinges on puns and wordplay that may not be possible to replicate in a target language. Anyway, successful translation is an art which requires skills, dedication, and an in-depth knowledge of both languages and cultures. And that's all for this edition of The Point with me, Liu Xin. As always, follow us on Twitter or visit our Facebook page using the handle The Point with Alex. Download the application called CGTN Live to watch our show on your mobile devices, or go to YouTube and look for CGTN The Point. Thanks for watching. You've got The Point.